You see, the terror attack, as we have called it today, is a pre-planned action to prevent a large number of people who are defense services oriented ones in reaching their destination from where they can operate against an enemy. The methods of preventing that action by an armed forces towards an enemy are many fold. It can be intelligence, it can be sabotage, it can be preventing their movement, it can be attack on their residences and things, so that when they are not actively involved in warfare, and finally resisting them when the warfare takes place. These are all many stages. All these information gathering, etc., is called spying on the other. Preventing movement of people, etc., is called terrorizing or terrorism as such. Finally, when they are at the right spot, preventing them from being effective in warfare is called sabotage. And finally, the issue of fighting with them is called warfare. Now, all these are normal steps that every nation takes to preserve their security, safety, and complete confidence on their frontier lines, so that the people in that country can live without any difficulty in peace and tranquility. Encourage them to upgrade their standards of life with technology and other issues involved, is what is called the role of the armed forces, role of the fighting forces to protect the country, protect the community, give them opportunity to develop themselves. That's what happened in all times. Now, this particular case of about 2,500 people going through a peculiar area which is very restricted road space, getting right through into the hilly terrain road into their destination called Srinagar. It is quite clever of opposite forces to stop them from moving through that particular place by either scaring them or sabotaging them or destroying a few of their forces, which is what happened in this particular case. Apparently, the people that we consider as our enemies, they had prepared themselves quite well, and induction of their terrorist group into the J&K through hilly terrains and passes and passages which are normally not used by anybody at all, is what they have chosen for the last many years. And as we have been told, this very batch of people have been there for the last 3 months, who have crossed over the borders. And how did they come? They've been trained to take sabotage actions. They've been equipped with weapons. They've been financed and otherwise to make sure that they are effective. and they are usefully deployed to counter the effectiveness of the Indian Armed Forces. This is what has happened today. The single individual who was a young guy of about 20 odd years, who was given up one vehicle and a few explosives, etc., etc., ideally chose a bus or something like that in which more number of people are sitting, and destroyed that particular vehicle and a few other vehicles. Naturally, explosives under a bus or around a bus, etc., etc., can create a lot of damage, which is what happened in this particular case. The people who were sitting innocently inside, unprepared for any warfare at all at that particular time, though they had the guns and other things in their hands probably, were taken by surprise and destroyed in this particular case. To start with, 30, 35, 34, 37, 40 have died. Even subsequent to that also, when these terrorists were encountered elsewhere, 2-3 of them were caught and killed. And in the bargain, 4-5 of the Indian forces also perished. That is direct warfare. This is what it is. This massive number of people dying at a particular time as an incident or an accident is something which shocks everybody. These 40 odd people that we are talking about is from across the country, not from one particular area. Every portion of this country had 1 or 2 people contributed towards this, 40 people. So it affects larger community and arises there with awareness, saying that we are under attack. 40 people dying in a warfare is not a much of an issue, but 40 people dying when they are traveling across on a peaceful road is a major issue. And when these 40 people are from across the country, everybody is seriously disturbed. The communities in which a widow is created, communities in which young children are made orphans, communities in which the elderly parents are left defenseless for themselves in their old age, is what affects the community. So if there are 40 sets of communities in this country who have been affected like this, 40 separate governments or municipalities have been affected by bringing in a dead body who went off from home about 10 days earlier, fully fit, wanting to marry, or got married, or recently married, or hoping that parents are looked after. All these people are affected now. They are all very disturbed. That is the reason why this has become a major issue. Otherwise, you read so and so thing happened, this is the second time. No, it is not that. It is happening almost regularly. 3-4 people dying across the border is almost a regular issue. Once in a week, once in 10 days, you hear an incident of having 2 people killed, somebody getting into an explosion, demining the mines, etc., etc. So this particular thing is called dangerously big because of the single accident or incident of one young boy managing to destroy 40 people in a group just traveling on a lonely road. That is why. We should have been careful enough at all times, having a party or two which are prepared at all times to protect themselves. They should have weapons and this and that, that. They should have been prepared, very careful about whenever crossroads are there, this, that, the other, and things like that, so that you have to be careful as to who's entering you, who's crossing you, who's coming in front of you, etc., etc. But there is no limit to all these. You can't be careful all the time. You get the point? When you are traveling across in a hilly terrain, you expect that there is nobody else there. You are alone. A convoy of 2,500 people is not a small number. It's a very large number. So they are quite confident of themselves. They are safe. They feel that. But when they were seriously going through a particular area, small incidents like this cannot be completely avoided. It is impossible to stop violence between individuals. As I told you earlier during the discussions, the ambitions of individuals, their claim to be superior to the other or cleverer than the other, their ego that they must achieve so and so thing as against the other person, etc., will continue to be there in a community. And when you have a socio-philosophical outlook totally different from one group of people to the other group of people, you will always find clashes, conflicts of opinions, conflicts of interests, and conflicts of levels of egoism will be there. As long as we are living in a country with about number of varieties of people, you can see for yourself the politics of today. Every day, every part of the country is having questions against the other part of the country. Every day, one leader is having conflicts about the opinions of the other leader. You cannot avoid conflicts. To maintain peacefulness, you will have to have a situation created wherein peace can prevail most of the time. And the steps that we follow should be accepted by people all over the world. It is impossible to do so, but yes, even our attitude or approaches to the enemy has to be convincing enough to the world at large to say that you are right. Otherwise, they will say that you are yourself violent. You get the point? You will not be in a position to take on a philosophy of I am the only one who is right. It cannot be so. That is why, if you notice that the government of India has gone across the world to convince people that this was an unnecessary act of violence through terrorism on unsuspecting travelers in a hilly terrain. That's what it is. revenge through violence is not an answer in many ways. Yes, it is to scare the other person that you can be punished. You understand the point? But to say that they've killed 41, we'll kill 82 is possibly not the correct answer. But to make those 82 or 820 to understand that they are possibly facing critical situations wherein they may be destroyed themselves would be the first step to take. Creating a situation or creating an awareness to the other person's mind that he is not all safe when he gets into violence. Violence against violence is not definitely avoidable, but that is not the only step. That is a step available in your hand when you are prepared to exercise violence, called warfare, etc., etc. That is not the only method of today. Yes, but 100 years ago, or what is called 1914, First World War, after that 1935, Second World War, etc., etc. Yes, those days the awareness of humanity at large was my country and my views alone will be right. Those are no more there now. We have a United Nations. We have democratic societies. You have collective governance bodies, etc., etc. Across the world, there are very few countries which are not today democratic. For any one of us to say that if they kill 40, we'll kill 80 is not a right answer to my mind. Yes, even if you kill 10, that should be really smart enough to say that others have got to be scared of you. You will not tolerate unnecessary violence exercised on your people. You should be in a position to do that. There is no limitation to all these. Based on the secure financial and resourcefulness of any community, you will find that a young widow with 2 children and 2 elderly parents and 2 elderly in-laws would need support. Initially, it is more or less an emotional support. Subsequently, to continue with their life, which they were used to otherwise with that man as the earning member, the society will have to support them. Instead of making them poorer by loss of one man, which always happens. You or I can get onto the road and get into an accident. That doesn't mean the whole world comes to a stop. So when a national calamity such as this happens, and that people across the country are aware that these people, we have created 40 families today who are in real bad state, the governance of the local panchayats, starting from panchayat upwards, people should start supporting that person to feel confident to continue with her or his or their life further and progressively develop the younger generation to grow up with confidence and ability to survive. To provide some levels of comforts during social calamities such as warfare, etc., which affects the sacrifice of a person with valor and dignity, leaves behind in the society his young wife as a widow, his young children as orphans, and older parents as helpless victims of the situation. To make sure that we can at least provide some small comfort to enable them to continue living reasonably satisfactorily, we have formed a foundation called Flags of Honor Foundation. This was formed by my son, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, some 11 years ago. It is represented by this little symbol of Flags of Honor Foundation and a national flag in the middle of it. We provide financial and social assistance to widows of martyrs and some comfortable level of education to those orphans created after the martyrdom, and even some medical facilities, etc., to the old parents where they are not covered by any other social facilities like government, etc. Now, this Flags of Honor Foundation spends a lot of money every year to each one of the widows created by accidents such as these, as projected to us by the Armed Forces Welfare institutions when they refer that point to us. These are very particularly useful in places like the hills of northeastern India, where the families are seriously bound by the strong, severe weather conditions and lack of very good living facilities like house, etc., etc. So is the case about their education of the children also. So we do provide quite a lot of facilities like this directly to the bank account created for that lady who is a widow, transferred across from one bank to the other, so that no personal involvement is ever sustainable, etc., etc. We have to protect any personal involvement which may create some amount of difficulties for that lady to get anything. We do it directly from the bank account here into the bank account of the lady, which we create for her, and then we support. This is what Flags of Honor Foundation does today. My experience is very strange enough, to the extent that I started working in the armed forces in the year 1949. Now, 49 was very different from 2019. The exposure that I got into the Air Force immediately after the Second World War, and introduction of jet engines and faster aeroplanes, etc., etc., and mass movement of people in bigger transportation aircraft, critical reaching to very critical places like helicopter flight into the very small places. These were not available at that particular time. I grew up through that. All these technology upgradation into a force called Air Force made me a lot more confident, a professional, and made it easy for me to learn more and made it more confident of me to be a much powerful professional. And I succeeded. I feel I've succeeded. Now I'm not young anymore, but I do have large number of people whom I have interacted with as youngsters of mine in the organization, who are all today sitting very well, powerfully exploiting their professionalism. Unlike the Second World War warfare, where a man walked around with one gun that he carried, today a man has more number of weapons in his own hand. Even when he is moving around, he doesn't carry just one gun alone. There are options for him to take any number of weapons, any equipment that he can create much more damages. That is the difference between my start of my life and the confidence which I face each one of you today. Thank you. All the very best. My good wishes are always for the younger and younger and younger generations for many, many more future years to be comfortable and peaceful. Thank you.